2, Warship 49, we're...
Warship 49, we're coming to port to avoid you. Warship 92, we're coming to port to avoid you as well.
Out of the channel over there, that ship got in front of the other one.
Beaver 1, Bravo, Papa 3-1, we got eyes on you guys are good to open.
Okay, thank you.
Those of you who have been with the Florida Maquis for quite some time will understand the significance of that little clip of video. What does it show? We have two United States Navy warships basically playing chicken, coming within only maybe a few hundred feet of each other. The ship that was sailing away from you was the guided missile destroyer Momsen, and the ship that was coming at you was the dock landing ship Harper's Ferry. Now, neither one of these ships were moving at full throttle, nowhere near as fast as the USS Fitzgerald was moving. What's the significance of that? Well, in a Navy ship, the faster you're going, the faster you can turn. The slower you're going, the slower you can turn because of the, of course, amount of water moving over the steering devices. This shows clearly that a destroyer, a United States Navy destroyer, could easily have gotten out of the way of the giant lumbering cargo ship ACX Crystal if it had wanted to way back in 2017. This idea that there wasn't enough time or they didn't realize what course they were on is all a bunch of baloney. You see, that was the original story that they cooked up and threw out that everybody just digested and took to be the truth. See, even today, with the great suspicion of the media, people still believe what they are told. Even when you can see now, right in front of your eyeballs, what they told you is total baloney. Now, no harm was done here, but it is a great example, an absolutely fantastic example of why the story of what happened to DDG 62 back in 2017 was total junk. It was a total lie, a complete cooked up lie. This idea that in the middle of the night, $2 billion Aegis destroyer sails out in front of a cargo ship, and supposedly the cargo ship was on autopilot, or the Navy crew was, oh, they're Obama Navy, they're SATSAC, didn't know what they were doing. All this kind of crap. You see, we found out in the investigation back then that the cargo crew was not asleep. The ship was not on autopilot. Neither ship was. And that they were aware of each other 30 minutes prior to the collision. 30 minutes prior to the collision, they were aware of each other's course and that there was a possible chance they could collide. And the story was that they just couldn't get out of the way in time. Now, go back and watch how easy this was. Just in a matter of a minute. These things were one ship length away from each other, and this thing just makes an easy little turn to port. And this ship here barely even turns to port. Barely turns to port. No worries, no big deal. Piece of cake. But this ship couldn't do it. And apparently neither could the Maquis as well. In a matter of months. This idea, the story of giant bulbous bows penetrating the hull and the captain hanging off the side of it. See, this is from 3 September. Way back in 2020. And I thought about covering it back then, but given the level of censorship that was going on at that time, I chose better. NTSB, unexplained course change was a critical error in fatal USS Fitzgerald collision. Now, when we called it an unexplained course change, boy, I tell you what, everybody and their brother who was in the Navy came to this channel and said, oh, it was this, oh, it was that, oh, you're crazy. They would never, the U.S. Navy would never lie. This was just a crew that just didn't know what they were doing. They were tired and untrained and all this kind of crap. See, they even show you a much better detailed map. Remember the crayon drawings? Those of you who have been around since then will remember the giant crayon drawings that the U.S. Navy released with the official reports. Looked nothing like this. They looked nothing like this. They were they literally looked like somebody took out a 4th grade coloring book and put giant blop dots on there, and they just made, I mean, they're talking about this little course change right here. This 10 degrees to starboard. And they still show this other ship here that was running parallel to the Crystal. And how had the Fitzgerald, the southbound Fitzgerald, maintained its course, it would have flown right in front of the Crystal. Missed it completely. We showed this over and over and over again, how this was entirely implausible. That the Navy ship, the crew, could have missed this giant, stories tall cargo ship, even in the middle of the night. Even if they had decided to react at sometime between 0127 and 0130 hours at the time. Plenty of time to literally they could have done a full 180 degree turn in 3 minutes. Easily. But did they? No. They just turned slightly to starboard and just sailed right out in front of it. It's a bunch of horse crap. And now we have visuals to prove it. Now, what if I told you it might be actually tied to this story with the spy balloon? See, everybody was all up in arms about, oh, how could we have allowed this to happen? How could we have allowed this to happen? Well, you see, the U.S. has been spying on China for a long time. They just do it a different way. This is from High Sutton. Unmanned underwater vehicles found off Chinese coast. Multiple different types of naval spy underwater vehicles do we launch on a regular basis off the coast of China to spy on their communications. These things go out undetected underwater. They surface, they monitor, they dive again. They surface, they monitor, they dive again. And then at a pre-programmed time, these things transit back out of Chinese waters and into international waters where these destroyers go and pick them up. And of course, there's nothing marking them. So the Chinese, given that there's a huge ocean out there, have had to employ civilian fishing boats to keep watch for these things and have offered rewards to Chinese fishermen saying, hey, you find one of these things, you bring it back to us, we'll pay you for it. And of course, the U.S. tries to twist that and says, the Chinese has this huge navy it's not talking about, and they're just calling them fishing boats. Not the case. Not the case. See, this is the U.S. just getting a big dose of its own medicine. See, when you look at things critically, with a critical eye, we have troops in South Korea, off the northeast coast of China. We have troops in Japan, east of China. We have heavy influence in Taiwan, right off the coast of China. We have huge naval station down in Guam in the Philippines, off the southeast coast of China. It was only back in the 70s when we invaded Vietnam and spent years and years there, off the southwest coast of China. Huge trading partners with India, directly west. See, there's U.S. influence and U.S. military folks all surrounding China on three sides. But what happens if China decides to open economic ties with, say, Nicaragua or Venezuela? Oh, it's the end of the world. It's Red Dawn invasion time. It's time to stockpile weapons because here they come over the poles. They're going to take over our country. Let me show this again. The U.S. is talking about defending Taiwan 100 miles from the coast of China, while we have thousands and thousands of troops stationed in South Korea and Japan. Huge naval station in Guam, in the Philippines. Prior to the Gulf, massive invasion in Vietnam, there for years, right off the southwest coast of China. So bad that the only time in the last, at least modern history, that the Chinese have ever had to enter another country was because the U.S. destabilized the region here so badly in the 70s and then left that they had to go in and restore order. India, huge partner with the West so far. But people are starting to learn. And then don't even talk about Afghanistan, directly to their west. I mean, on how many different sides? The only side that the U.S. hasn't is the north of China, and that's basically because of Russia. And of course, we all know about the U.S. and Russia now, don't we? But I don't know how you... and you can watch this for yourself if you want to on YouTube, how you can watch this and still believe the story about the McCain, still believe the story about the Fitzgerald, still believe the story about the Obama Navy, and oh my gosh, and all this crap. Because there are people out there that still do, that think that this channel was absolutely inappropriate and incorrect in the assessment that the U.S. Navy and U.S. government was lying to you about what happened with the USS John McCain, the USS Fitzgerald. But now, I would like to ask them to explain this. How when these two ships, who visually were looking at each other with only a few hundred feet, maybe, between them, could easily miss each other. But somehow the Fitzgerald and the ACX Crystal that knew about each other's course 30 minutes prior, at least, by radio communications, allegedly attempting to avoid each other, ran into each other. And then only a matter of a couple of months later, the issue with the McCain as well. An entirely different situation, but same story. Same malarkey, baloney story. Personally, I think the Fitzgerald might have been trying to recover one of these UUVs, and the reason you saw the massive damage below the waterline was that perhaps the Chinese had gotten a hold of one, loaded it up with explosives, and then when it got close to the Fitzgerald, kaboom. And that's what left it set in the water. And maybe the Crystal was just going to be their cover story, taking the thing out. So, I know it's been a long, long time since we've talked about this, but I just couldn't let this video go. I couldn't. I just don't know. I just don't know how you watch this and see they're not moving very fast here at all. I don't know how fast they're going, but I know it ain't 20 knots for sure. They're not doing that in this bay in San Diego. But that actually makes the ships less maneuverable. I know it sounds odd, but ask anybody from the Navy. The faster a ship is going, the more maneuverable it is. The slower it's going, the less maneuverable it is. The faster it's going, the more maneuverable. The slower it's going, the less maneuverable. And in this particular case, these two ships were going very slow. But the destroyer clearly, even in a matter of a couple of hundred of feet, easily got out of the way of the Harper's Ferry. The Momsen did. So, of course, you're only going to see this covered in certain outlets. Nobody's going to show you about this. It's been up on YouTube for now 3 months, and even I missed it. Actually, not even that much. See, December, January. Well, yeah. All of December, all of January, and now a week into February. So, anyway, I just thought a good portion of my audience would be interested in seeing this. So, thank you very much. Have a great weekend. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.